people aren't afraid of dying as much as fully living. The more and more you're addicted to the linearity, the certainty, the speed of the linear mind, the more and more you think that you are residing in the egoic world of duality. And when you can actually be at peace with the vastness, the awe, the mystery, I think people are really afraid of the fullness of that and the humility it requires to just be like, holy cow. This is so much more awesome to be a part of this field that we're a tiny little sand, right? And I think that's what people are afraid of, because the ego convinces itself it's the whole story. It convinces itself it's the main act. It's completely deluded.
Welcome to the Legendary Podcast, an invitation into intimate, soul-bearing conversations with the gods and goddesses of our Burning Man camp, the legendary playground of the gods. Here you'll meet the visionaries, wisdom keepers, heart-centered entrepreneurs, and edge walkers who make up this extraordinary soul family. Together, we'll journey through the turning points that shaped us, the failures, the victories, the breakdowns, and the breakthroughs, and what it truly means to rise and build something sacred from the ashes. If you've been searching for your people, if you've longed to find a community that inspires you to rise, you found your tribe. So join us now for another sacred journey. Welcome to the playground of the gods. Welcome to Legendary. Hello, legends, and welcome to another episode of the Legendary Podcast. I'm Celinne Da Costa, your guide and host for today's journey, and I'm honored today to walk beside Gary Malkin, and we're going to explore the story that makes him legendary. So first of all, Gary, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Celine. Great to be here.
I'm so happy to have you here. And one of my delights with doing these interviews is that sometimes I have already met and personally burned with the people that I'm speaking with on the other line. But what's really fun about today is that I've never met you before. We haven't had a conversation before. I don't know much about you other than the raving reviews from Gerald, who was like, you got to talk to this guy. And I'm like, who is this guy? I'm not even going to Google him. And I do this on purpose because I wanted today's conversation to feel like, I'm the one that's talking to you today. But for listeners, I want them to feel like they're in my shoes and they're literally getting to know you for the very first time.
Cool. I love that.
I'm going to be the guinea pig for this.
Fantastic.
Does that sound good?
That's great.
Beautiful, beautiful. So before we dive deeper, Gary, can you share with us, who are you? What do you do? And what's lighting you up the most in life right now?
So my former career from roughly 79 to 99, I had the largest music production company in the Bay Area. And I did at that time over 1,000 commercials, around 20 or 25 feature films, about 20 albums, about 100 documentaries. And I was doing it as a composer, right? And the art of composing music for content, either audio or video content, is the art of awakening the emotional subtext so that you can actually hear cognitive knowledge with an emotional component that allows it to land in your heart, body, mind, soul, instead of just your linear mind, right? And then, like most people's evolutionary journey, I had a horrendous, unexpected accident in 1998 that created this summer of Job where everything exploded and I lost my marriage and didn't know if I'd ever play the piano again. And, in the rubble of a very, very intense experience, I didn't know if I'd play the piano for almost a year. I was in physical therapy. And it was during that time that I had just started working on a project that a friend of mine wanted to create something for the end, people facing the end of life. And everybody was 1998, 2000. The world still is caught in an enormous avoidance and denial of the power of facing our impermanence, right? And so we came up with this idea that we started before the accident. What if we asked world-class wisdom keepers like Ram Dass, Thich Nhat Hanh, Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, all these famous people, if they were going to die tomorrow, what would they say? to the ones they loved the most. And in that hour and a half interview with these world famous people, including Thich Nhat Hanh and a lot of amazing people, we edited everything so that it was a continuous 5 minutes of mind blowing intimacy and tenderness. And then I used an 80-piece orchestra and scored it in George Lucas's Skywalker sound to a score. Nobody had ever taken the film scoring art and applied it to the delivery of world-class universal wisdom. And this work got released in 2001, and it became, within just a few years, the most respected intervention for helping people heal avoidance and fear and denial around death and loss. Um, that is actually in the world today. It's touched over 1 million people. But this began the doorway for me realizing that my life is not about commercial media. It's about, I call it, instead of entertainment, it's entertainment. It's cultivating and deepening our connection to who we are, what matters most, and awakening the multiple intelligences that we are beyond just the linear rational mind, which in my whole world now, after 25 years of that being out in the world, where I focused on the beginning of life, I focused on creating works for the end of life. I focused on leadership cultivation tools. I focused on caregiver rejuvenation tools. And I've done a lot of stuff in the last 25 years, but they're all unified by one thing. The shit we've gotten ourselves into comes from thinking that we humans are defined by the axiom, I think, therefore I am. But there are multiple intelligences available to us that I define as soul, heart, body, spirit. They're frequencies of their own. And I've developed a multiple a library of musically infused spoken word and music and other musical tools to really awaken us to what I believe is the most important form of intelligence that's innate to human beings, and that is resonance intelligence, the ability to feel resonant with a person, a place, because you can't use your mind for that. So I'm on this mission to help people cultivate resonance intelligence. And the fruit of that intelligence is what we're experiencing or hoping to experience right now, which is presence and flow. And that's the highest states, along with gratitude, that we humans always aspire to. So that's my world, is using music to awaken these multidimensional, multisensory, optimal frequency states of human beings. Does any of that make sense?
I mean, I'm just over here with my mind blown. There's so many things I want to ask and say. So I'm hearing that, yeah, you create music that is infused with spoken words and other elements to support people in their awakening journey. And as you know, one of your favorites, it sounds, is supporting people with being able to deal with the impermanence of life. That is so beautiful. And it really touched my heart. As I shared at the beginning, I don't know you. I didn't know this about you. And you know what's really magical as you're speaking is my grandfather and my great grandfather were both composers.
Whoa,
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
amazing.
Yeah. Pianists and composers. And there was something my grandfather said to me, and it's fresh on my mind because I was just editing my book. And my grandfather, he would say to me, there's the people who play music because they have to, and then there's people who play because they have the touch, because they must. And he says, listen carefully, because you will be able to feel those who play because they must, because it is of their soul, and those who play because they have to. And what
Wow.
I'm hearing from you, like and he says, you will feel it in your body. And it's funny because I have full body truth bumps as you're speaking about this being so deep to your soul's mission. And I'd love to hear more about resonance, resonance intelligence, because some people might be hearing this and have been literally be hearing this term for the very first time. So if you can, explain to us what is resonance intelligence, and I'd love to hear why music. Like, why you could be doing art, you could be doing this in the finance world, but you're doing it here. Why?
All right. Well, wow. That's a big question. Okay. Well, I think we need to go back to what makes me qualified to do this. And I'm about to launch in the next few months a whole new community based on authenticity, vulnerability, transparency. I call vulnerability the currency of transformation, right? And why I'm appropriate for this message is because I grew up, for whatever reason, with a deep hunger since the day I was born for presence, for someone looking at me and going, I got you. I'm here for you. I love you. And the absence of it being completely gone from the moment I was born until I first touched a piano at 5 years old made me actually create a compensatory ego structure that's caused an enormous amount of pain and dysregulation. In other words, that suffering, that coal that turned into this diamond of hunger for presence, right? Which I never had as an infant, made me externally motivated to look outside for love and attention and presence, where all of it, of course, we know can only come from your inside out connection to source. So I had to go through a 70+ year journey of doing what actually mostly the American culture has been doing, which is looking outside for meaning, looking outside for love, looking outside for validation. I had to go through that experience. But if I hadn't had music be the one that taught me at the moment I touched the piano at 5 years old at a friend's house, and I remember when I touched the piano and I heard this sound resound, and it was literally like a little boy coming up from being submerged in water for 5 years and all of a sudden got its first breath. I started finally something that receives me and responds to me with this sense of spaciousness that, frankly, now I know from a metaphysical point of view, connected me to the common denominator of the universe, which is vibration, frequency, resonance, right? So I went through a journey of using music as a way to assimilate my pain of not being met and to turn it into some way in which I could use the universal language of human emotion, music, to be my language, right? And so when I first saw a film at 10 years old called The Miracle Worker, I was watching a movie and I was homesick one day. And it was the first moment I understood what film scoring actually was. It was a clue to my subconscious to feel something. And I was, because I'd been playing piano since 5 years old, improvising and composing right almost instantly, I was tuned to this emotional language. And suddenly I realized I want to do that. I want to create music that cracks people's hearts open so that I don't feel so alone as being the only guy that wears his heart on his sleeve. Because it was hard being a little boy where he was so emotionally connected, you know? And now, after the work of Brene Brown, who calls authenticity the birthplace of our innocence, the birthplace of our authenticity, the birthplace of presence, the birthplace of resonance. Vulnerability is the currency of transformation. And so I spent a lifetime creating musical experiences that crack people's hearts open so they can remember who they are and what matters most. And that's everything I've done has led me up to this moment, really. So I'll stop there. I don't even know if I answered your question, but that's sort of.
It doesn't matter. You answer it by not answering and going sideways and upwards and downwards. It's beautiful. It's beautiful. Here's what I heard that really stood out. Music is the universal language of human emotion, and you used it as a way to assimilate your pain.
That's right.
Now, I feel this, so I can hear, speaking of resonance, I can just hear my grandfather's heart through your voice and your passion. And I also, I played myself the piano for almost 20 years. And
Wow.
I remember thinking to myself, I would play it when I was very depressed in college. And I remember thinking to myself, this is the only place where I can be, where I can do something and nothing at the same time. And I can just be suspended in this moment, and everything's beautiful and everything's okay. So I love the way that you've described your music as a healing modality. And I'd love to hear more about you mentioned briefly that you didn't have connection presence growing up. And so being introduced to the piano was a way for you to find that for yourself. Can you tell
You're
us more?
you're
Yeah.
an, you're an awesome listener, by the way.
Thank you.
Yeah, I can't believe all that you absorbed and could spit back to me like that. That's,
Yeah.
again, it's very satisfying for someone who has a childhood wound of never
Yeah.
being heard and seen. I feel very heard and seen. So thank you.
I'm
Thank you very,
listening. I'm
yeah, yeah.
listening.
I love that. Thank you.
I'm listening. I'm assimilating. I'm connecting dots. So thank you for reflecting that back to me. There's more.
Yeah, good.
So, I'm curious about what were the forces that shaped you in the background. So you shared with me, you had this moment, you were 10 years old. You said, whoa, I want people to feel this way. This is something I want to be able to reproduce. And then you have a long career ahead of you. So then what happened?
um, Well, one of the most important things that happened to me as a freshman in college was I beat out like 50 other accompanists, company, a very world-class famous ballet teacher. And I was a freshman in college at USC for my first year. I transferred to Oberlin Conservatory after that. But this woman was a titan of creating like uh, huge protestations of Franco's Spain and Franco in like the fascist Spain in the 30s, right? And she was one of those people that was a real activist that if art wasn't for making the world a better place and waking people up, what the heck was it for after all? So I was only a freshman, but she was like my first guru in a way. And she was world class, Misha Baryshnikov and Cynthia Gregory and Rudolf Nuria would come into the class and I'd be playing the piano. But this woman was a real rabble rouser. She was, she hated the people that were informers of the McCarthy era and all that. And why I bring her up, it's rare that I bring her up in my interviews but I do need to say that she had a huge impact on me because I became known during my reign and during when I had a big music company doing TV, national television, national commercials, TV, film, etc. I was known as the guy to do public service announcements. Give it to Gary. He loved doing work that's for the greater good. And I would come home from writing music for public service announcements or documentaries about saving the planet or whatever. And I'd feel so freaking good that something I did made a difference in the world, but I was never making money from those projects. And so I kept on saying, how can I do just that? Because that's the only time when I'm really, really happy. All the other is money and profile and prestige. And I liked that, but it was just, after a while, I wanted to have some meaning, right? And so when I had that accident that I referenced, I realized, be careful what you ask for if you're not very specific. I wanted a big career because I wanted to be loved. I wanted a big career because I wanted my dad's approval. I wanted a big career because I wanted to show other men that I wasn't a softie, even though I had a lot of feminine qualities. I wanted a career for all the egoic reasons that come from an egoic compensatory strategy. And when this accident came, I went, what do you really want? And that's when this project, just a quick whiplash, that the Bhagavad Gita says 5,000 years ago, what is the most remarkable thing in all the world? The most remarkable thing in a 5,000-year-old Hindu text says, the most remarkable thing in all the world is that everyone will die, but no one ever thinks it will happen to them. And suddenly, as I started working on this project that became world famous, I go everywhere and people say, wait a minute, you did that? And they start to cry and hug me for how it changed the way they said goodbye to their loved one that passed, or how they processed loss. So what I realized was there was a great secret that this work that I created with Michael and Doris Stillwater, my partners at the time, did, which was the secret of life is to have more than a cognitive understanding of your dying so that you can live with a radical appreciation for how freaking precious this life is. And therefore you can't unless you're insane, you can't willfully harm another or the earth because you recognize the preciousness of life. So a great secret in life is like what Don Juan said in his famous Castaneda books: live with death over your left shoulder at every moment of your life, and you'll be the happiest and most fulfilled you could ever imagine, right? That's why the Dalai Lama does a daily death practice. So I really became initiated through my accident, which really ended with, there was a divorce and didn't know if I played the piano. I was shacked up on, anyway, it was horrible. But it made me realize more than at a cognitive level that I was just going to disappear one day and that my life was fragile and that I could go at any moment and I had no control over where, when, or how. And suddenly when you wake up to that, Celine, nothing's ever the same. So I don't even know. I keep on going on these tangents. I think that if I wanted to answer this question, I would say that I've been on this tear for 25 years, and it's only now that the kind of fruits that I've gotten from it that are turning into portals of awe and the book I'm writing on resonance intelligence, for the first time I'm feeling, even though I've been accorded an enormous amount of acknowledgement at keynote speeches all around the world and all that, to actually make money for what it is that I'm talking about, I feel for the first time the Tony Robbins, soulful entrepreneurs, the Joe Dispenza's who are awakening up those people, that audience, these are the people that are starting to actually notice what I'm saying is actually the mother lode of everything you want, every success you could possibly dream of, every possible thing that you could want for success. If it's not based in a fundamental recognition of gratitude for life's preciousness that results in presence, with each moment being radically a gift, what the hell are you doing with your life? What possible importance could it have? It's not based in that. And that's where I'm starting to get a lot of people asking me to show up in circles that I've never been asked before. And it's freaking exciting. And I feel it's keeping me young, even though I've been around for 7 decades. I'm a kind of a 40-year-old heart, because that's why I hang around with a lot of young millennials, and I'm loving it. And that's why I'm going to Burning Man this year, because damn if I'm going to go through life not having that experience at least once in my life. So there we go.
I love that. Thank you. Gary, have you ever read the book Home with God? It's
No,
oh my gosh, you're gonna love it. It's the same. It's Neil. There's one. It's Neil something. I don't remember his last
not
name, but
Neil Donald Walsh. Not Neil Donald.
he's the guy that does conversations with God.
Yeah, I know him. Sure.
Yeah. So Home with God is all about facing our death. And I've also read the Castaneda books and also the what's the book, the Tibetan book of living and dying.
Right. Surya Das.
It's it's such a fascinating topic and one that most people fear. And so I would love if we can dive into this topic when, because we've been speaking about it in broad strokes in terms of creating this incredible music that you happen to support people with coping with this. But if we double click on that, can you share more what have been your biggest insights and learnings from, from everything you've learned, if you were to collate it into the highlight reel of what is it that people are really fearing when it comes to death, and why do you believe that what you created was actually able to support them? You made this thing and it worked. Why?
So I believe that we are, I use the analogy of soil. I don't know if you know, but there's the soil that is now on the planet is about 50% of the nutrition that it was 50 years ago, for example, something like that, right? And I analogize the soil to our capacity for presence and full chakra, full being engagement with one another as being diminished and subjugated, right? And so in that famous story of put a frog in a pot of hot water and it jumps out, but put a frog in a pot of water and of cold water and incrementally heat it. We humans, unbeknownst to us, allow ourselves to modulate intermittently and incrementally into states of less and less life, less and less range of color of our emotions, less and less of our heart and soul engagement and more of our mental thinking that I think, therefore I am. So what I believe is that people aren't afraid of dying as much as fully living. I think that when you start really rocking the boat and actually looking at it, people are getting more and more accustomed to being narrow. There's a smaller range of emotions. So there's less, Brene Brown wrote this book recently. It was very heady, but it was really cool. And it was called The Atlas of the Heart. And she talks about how words reflecting a deeper nuanced understanding of emotion actually correlates to longevity and fulfillment. So, in other words, when we actually are intimately aware of the nuance of our emotions, there's a key to that that has direct correlation to our fulfillment for our life itself, right? So, I believe that people are more afraid. The more we're entrenched in the addiction to our linear rational minds, think about it. The drug of the linear rational is an addiction to certainty, an addiction to speed, an addition to filling space and not allowing spaciousness to allow you to face the unlimited existence of the unified field, which is 99.99% of an energetic and unseen. And what they say, the unified field people, the movement that I'm very involved in called the Holo movement, which I highly recommend, holomovement.net. I spoke there at the conference this last May. What they say is that the 3D field that we see of manifestation is the foam on top of the ocean of the implicate field of the unified field of existence, right? So the more and more you're addicted to the linearity, the certainty, the speed of the linear mind, the more and more you think that you are residing in the egoic world of duality. And when you can actually be at peace with the vastness, the awe, the mystery, I think people are really afraid of the fullness of that and the humility it requires to just be like, holy cow. This is so much more awesome to be a part of this field that we're a tiny little sand, right? And I think that's what people are afraid of because the ego convinces itself it's the whole story. It convinces itself it's the main act. It's completely deluded. And so I think that's why I'm starting this website called portalsofawe.com. Because awe, allowing yourself to feel awed in wonder, is the actual soul calisthenic that awakens you to that humility. Because if you notice something, you cannot feel victimized if you're feeling humble. Think about that. It's like cancer can't live in an oxygen-rich environment. So when you're humble and aware of the vastness, awe becomes the precursor to flow, resilience, and all the things we want in life. So that's what the book's about. That's what I'm writing about. I finally wrote my first chapter yesterday. I've been talking about this book for 10 years. It's mostly been in all my keynotes. But anyway, that's my... And by the way, I decided that there was a more unifying factor to all this work. The end of life was the mother, as Deepak Chopra says, death is the mother of all life. But I started focusing on the beginning of life as well, when I saw how horrendously medicalized women are forced to do scheduled C-sections, even when they're not medically required to. And the whole birthing thing is a complete travesty around how they're destroying agency for natural childbirth and conscious childbirth to emerge as something that is a very important evolutionary step for human beings to reclaim women's right to have a natural birth and let go of all the horror stories. Anyway, I could go down that path because I've done a book and a CD and now a musical that we're looking for funding for a world-class life-changing musical around the miracle of life. So it's not just death that I've used. I'm using the bookends of life are the ones that have more engagement with the greater community, our friends, family. Everybody notices when someone dies. Everyone notices when someone's being born. This is where the heart soul engagement is required to birth a new world of higher consciousness and higher frequency on the planet. I'll stop there. Mic drop.
Mic drop. Beautiful. I love it. Oh my goodness. So I love what you said in terms of it's really focusing on the bookends of life, the beginning and the end, figuratively speaking. And I also really loved what you shared in terms of the 3D world being the foam on top of the ocean, because how easy and tempting in today's modern day and age is it to slip back into our conditioned patterns, into believing that we're disconnected from the all, and you're crossing the street and the car honks at you, or you're at the grocery store, you go at the coffee shop, you drop the coffee. There's all these micro moments that continuously invite us to either come into that deeper state of gratitude or slip back into the forgetting. So I really love what you shared about that. And as you're speaking, Gary, I'm seeing, the wisdom of your words. And then I'm seeing underneath that wisdom, behind this wisdom, there's you. There's you, the human. And I'm very curious about, for you to get to this place where you've been able to create not just material success in your life, but really this deeper understanding of life and how it moves and everything that you shared your writing about in your book. What did you most have to overcome inside of yourself to reach the point where you are now?
You are such a good interviewer. Oh my God. I so love you. You're amazingly deep.
Thank you.
And you're asking me, a person who believes that vulnerability is the currency of transformation, to walk my talk by answering that question, right? I recently had a reading from a phenomenal medical intuitive. And I've always sensed there was something that happened to me in those early 3, 4 years where I had decided on an operating system that was finite and unsustainable. I made it work. It got me here, but the level of disability and neglect that I had as a being made it possible, ironically, for me to be a creator of music, because it was that pain, yearning to resolve pain, right? But at this point in my life, the biggest overcoming has been to shift my operating system from needing outside to validate me to understanding that the only unconditionally loving parent I'll ever have is within me, right? So for me, the wound that I could have, and most people go to their deaths without ever resolving. I can understand this could have stayed with me without assimilating, easy till my death without it, because it was so entrenched in the pre-verbal DNA of my being. But I'm finally developing a relationship with Source that has my own internal reference point of the kind of the pilot light to God that isn't looking outside of me now. And it was so compelling to try to find it outside, whether it's money or attention or importance or rewards. And I had a lot of that, and I lost it all too. I understood about that, what letting it go. But so this is going to mean so much more to me as I'm starting to kind of build myself back, that the only game in town that matters is the one that, besides being kind, generous, grateful, forgiving, loving, empathic, compassionate to the best of my ability as a responsible human on this planet, the only game in town is an inside game, period. And that was the big, big, hardest journey. And that I'm still going through, right? But that I would say would be my answer.
Wow. Thank you. It's it's one thing to hear those words, or a spin-off of those words being spoken and regurgitated by a 20 something year old life coach. Nothing that Not that there's anything wrong with that or judgment, but there's a wholly different weight that comes from hearing it from a man that, as you said, has lived 7 decades and has had experiences of great success and material success and things like that, and isn't, a guru, isn't like in the spiritual world preaching in that way. Because sometimes when, you hear Buddha saying something like that, you're like, yeah, but you're Buddha. So it's like, you know what I mean? You don't do any, like, you just levitate. But there's something different about having like my Burning Man brother who we're gonna burn together is like spitting these truths from like a deeply I can feel the weight of your
Hard
experience
earned,
behind your words.
hard earned, baby. Hard earned. I got the
Hard
star.
earned,
I got
hard
the
earned.
stars. They're all over, man. And
Good,
I'm
good.
proud of them, man.
Amazing. So here's what I have this question, and as I'm about to ask it, I can sense the listeners or anyone who's meeting you who might want the answer to this because, you've hard earned it over 7 decades. And a lot of us were in our 30s, in our 40s, in our 50s. We've got less time on the dock than you. And, we're going to put in our time. We're going to learn our wisdom. But the wisdom of the man who's done it is really, really valuable. And if you were to speak to someone who is listening right now, who is a couple decades younger and is still in the process of like, I know what he's saying. I know what he's saying, but I'm not living it. I'm not in practice of it, even though I really, really want to be. How do we bridge that gap faster? How,
All right.
how do we do that
All right.
sooner?
So first of all, I was going to interrupt you and say, yeah, I've been told by my millennial brothers and sisters that I'm an OG. Uh, and I think that's called original gangster, right?
Yeah,
But
original gangster. That's right.
not an old guy. Okay. But I know it sounds overly simplistic, but I think that the stand, like that famous song, the da 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 doesn't apply as time goes by. There's some good old standards that that have to do with slowing down, that have to do with allowing spaciousness and beauty and truth and goodness to have its way with us. And you can't do that in the fast lane. And that's why my music in the last 10 years has become, and really the last 25 years, has always been about dilating time in a state of spacious beauty that entrains people to a willingness not to avoid the unavoidable reality of the field of which we are a part. And so the slowing down is always the first step. That's why we always talk about the breath, breathing, but not just going through the motions, but breathing with a sense of curiosity and not knowing. And with every breath, breathing in, like, I don't know. I don't know. Some of the holiest words you could ever say. I don't know. I don't know who I am. I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know where I am. But please show me, and ask, show me, show me who I am. So that's always the first step. And that's one of the reasons why my music is becoming more popular among certain people that are really conscious evolutionary souls, because the music becomes a chance to fulfill, and I know this sounds corny and woo-woo, but I don't have to worry about this with this crowd, that music and sound, particularly sculpted and curated, has a destiny to fulfill as if it was alive. Music has the power when utilized in the right hands. Not all music's made for this purpose, but when you do it with, just think about it. From time immemorial, the indigenous people played the chant and the drum as we did plant medicine to keep one anchor on the ground and the other in the sky and the other in spirit, right? Music has always been an intermediary bridge for the carrier of optimal highest frequency intention, right? It's an anchor that keeps us with one anchor in this world and the other anchor in the unseen world. If we can use the music that I create is about using the time dilation component of music that stretches us in awe and beauty, that allows the hyper neuronal pathways that have acclimated to this society's speed, certainty, and fear-based reality to relax into a more innate understanding that we are all everything at every moment, and we are God's children, and we are available to feel our soul's path if we give it the time and the oxygen and the beauty and the spaciousness to drop into that. And so nature is always the best place to do that. And then I always say that my goal is to create musical states that attempt, futilely, of course, but attempt to create a nature experience of spaciousness, right? So that if you can't be in nature, maybe my music could be one of the alternatives that can drop you into that spacious energy that I think awakens us to our innate wholeness, right?
Mm.
And that's the thing is we all are equipped innately with everything we need. That's my response.
Beautiful. Thank you. So, you know, one of the things that I teach in my work and study deeply is the art of language coherence. And when you share with me about music, I feel that way also about words in the sense that when we speak and we do so with presence and intention from our heart, before the vibration is actually the stillness. And if we can slow down enough to drop into the stillness, we get to touch source. And
Is
if
it?
we can speak when the vibration comes, if we can speak from that place, the words we carries the vibration of source and it can
Right.
rearrange the coherence of the room. And what I love about music is I find it to be easier and because the with words we're constantly using them and we're using them in so unconscious ways, colloquial ways, conditional ways. But what I find about music is it allows me to drop, not worry about the words, which takes a little bit more like, oh, these people speak the same language, but you can speak any language you want. And as long as it comes from source, it will
Oh,
resonate.
I freaking love you. Oh my God. Yeah, because I've started my new nonprofit that's based on this beautiful thing you just said, which is for 27 years now, I have been recording world-class visionaries in the studio. I've spent time with them. And I have 600 hours of these amazing recordings where I ask them not to speak from their head, but I ask them to say, if they were coming from the depth of their tenderness and their authenticity to someone they love, what would you say to them as if your words would would change their lives, right? So these people, Gene Houston, uh, so many amazing souls, Desmond Tutu, so many incredible people I've been with. They would say, "What? You want me to speak that way?" And the reason I'm bringing this up now is because after recording all of these speakers that are world famous, I have come to the same conclusion that it almost doesn't matter what they're saying if they're coming from the frequency of intention, depth, tenderness, and authenticity that they're coming from. It's like blah 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 blah. If it's if it's real from there, it doesn't matter. But here's what I want to say: is that in this world, in a perfect world, Celine, at least 20 minutes into this interview, we'd stop talking and, in my view, irrigate the space with the moisture of heart and soul that only music can provide. And and I create it for at least 2 minutes, but or even 30 seconds if we only had that, which is why I've created a tool called the Transformances, which opens our gatherings online to drop us into the moisture of the heart and soul as only music can, right? And what it does is it infuses our engagement with that presence that prevents the runaway train of hyper verbal engagement, right? So have you ever walked into a conference when everybody's just yada 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 yada? It's just like get me out of here. You know,
Mhm.
I that's why I'm an artistic director of conferences. I'm a curator that understands, like a film composer, that in this moment in the arc of the conference, we need a real, moving, authentic, transparent, powerful, inspiring, wondrous experience to remind our minds that the mind isn't all there is, right?
Mhm.
So, in a perfect world, you'd stop 20 minutes into this interview and play one of my pieces and come back and say, okay, I'm able to hear now with my heart and soul, not just with mind. So it's just it's the way we're designed in this planet. And our job is to floss our teeth and to nourish our hearts and souls in a world that's becoming more and more um, busy and overstimulating and fear-based and divisive. And our job is to do whatever we can to crack people's hearts open so that we can be real with each other as vulnerable, transparent souls.
Well, now I want to hear your pieces.
I know, that's why I asked, could I play some music?
Oh, I didn't. I thought you meant a visual presentation. You have? Can you?
I don't have the technology on
Well,
this
it's
on the,
okay.
on
Well,
this one.
what we can do is we can link to it in the show notes. So whoever's
Great.
listening, make sure that as soon as we complete, you go into the show notes and you click on the link. So
There
don't
we
worry, we'll
go.
make it happen. We'll make it
Okay.
happen.
Thank you. I
Beautiful.
just love the questions you're asking, Celine. I mean, you're so tuned in to the very thing you just said about words is something I've learned now after interviewing 150 wisdom keepers that it ain't the words. It's not the meat, it's the motion. It's like,
Yeah, it's the motion it's the tone that gets carried through the word.
there it is.
Beautiful. Well, something you shared in terms of when you were giving us advice on how do we really embody this concept of everything is on the inside, and you said something along the lines of you need to slow down and allow the beauty, the bliss, the spaces in between to touch you. I'm paraphrasing. But what really caught my ear with that is a lot of people, most people don't allow. And, when if you said to someone, hey, would you like to experience the beauty and the bliss of life and the joys of life and all the things you just said happens in the spaces when you slow down? People will be like, yes, I would. But then we're not. So
This
what
is why I
is?
love the greatness I see in you exercise that Gerald and Maya Rose do. I love that exercise. I can never get enough of it. Sorry, I interrupted you,
Mhm.
but this is what I love about that. You can walk in front of somebody, not know them at all, and suddenly show up with your full senses, mirror neurons, heart, soul, body open in a space and go, the greatness I see in you. And you'll say things that are accurate and you don't even know the person. What's that about? Right? It's profound, right? This is anyway. I'm sorry I interrupted. You were leading up to a question, but
Yeah.
I
Well, the
cut you off.
question is, this piece around slowing down, if an answer is to allow it, then why don't people do that?
Well, this is analogous to what we were talking about, the fear of death. Again, the ego wants to do anything it can do to consistently feed its life and stay alive in control of reality, of the reality of duality, of yes, no, good, bad, all that stuff. So it's threatening to enter the field beyond good and bad, like the Rumi poem, I'll meet you there, right? The spaciousness is a gateway into the field beyond duality. And the ego's not interested in protecting and preserving our well-being. It's interested in doing whatever it can do to maintain its identity. I have a friend that wrote a book. He's one of my best, closest friends. He was the one that wrote the scripts for Werner Erhard in the 70s for Est, and the script for Live Aid in the 80s. And I mean, he's just the most unbelievable writer. And he wrote a book I can't recommend highly enough. That he died 3 years ago, but and so big loss, but it's called, you check the title of this book, and it's very much about this. It's a great book to read specifically in response to what you just asked. And it's called Delightment, not enlightenment, but Delightment. And here's the subtitle: Escaping the Solitary Confinement of Your Personality. And that book, every axiom, every page is all these different writings really are designed to tilt the egoic mind into, wait, what? Wait, what? You want that. That's a good thing.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
At every moment, wait, what? So I think that's an answer, and the answer to why people are afraid of it, because the ego attachment to an identity, to a personality, is so profound. I mean, it's one of the reasons why I love altering my consciousness and going to a movie. I love, because I've been creating music for movies and television for, I don't know. Have you ever seen the movie Thrive from Foster? Yeah,
No,
Kimberly
but
Gamble.
I'm gonna tell you something. My mind just went, wait, what? Because you just said I love altering my consciousness and going to a movie. Just I barely watch movies because I'm like, oh, I don't want to put junk in my brain. But you just like that one little comment was a key for me because I'm like, I never thought about it as
Oh,
altering my consciousness. I've just been staying clear of most movies unless they're, very, very highly recommended or, award winning. That's the only time
well,
I'll watch them.
I curate what I'm going to put into my consciousness
Yeah.
because I want to see something that's going to touch, move, and inspire me. And
Ooh,
I
I
do
love
that, and I
that.
change my consciousness, and I go to a film that's going to crack my heart open, and I just got an infusion of awe and wonder and the precursor to the unified experience. So I get to remind myself who I am and what matters most when I go to movies that help me feel in the shoes of the protagonist, and I get to be someone else for 2 hours by dropping fully into that experience. I highly recommend you should see The Matrix and The Gladiator and
Yeah.
To Kill
The Gladiator is my favorite movie. And
and yeah, yeah, and To Kill a
well, I've watched
Mockingbird,
both.
to the old classic of. I mean, I can give you a list.
I've
Films
seen
are gateways into awakening the range of our emotions and our consciousness. So
mm,
please don't deprive yourself. Evaluate what you want to, what trip you want to go on, but don't throw the baby out with the
yeah,
bathwater.
love that. I love that. That is a really I just like that was 2 minutes. I mean, this whole interview has been blowing my mind, but in 2 minutes, I think you changed my life about movies. So thanks for
I
that.
am.
I was like, what? What do you mean? Oh my gosh. I love it. I love it. So, the answers I have a pretty clear sense of the answer, but I want the pleasure of hearing you speak it out loud anyways, which is I'm curious about what legacy or impact are you most committed to leaving in the world, not just through your work, but through the way that you live?
Well, there's no question the answer to that question for me. And the result of it is you can find it on the globalwisdomfoundation.org, globalwisdomfoundation.org. I had the opportunity to create Portals of Awe a year ago. That's a subscription-based site, and my business partner believes that the world is ready for me and this message. And it would have been a way for me to finally clean up my financial foundation in a way that would take less anxiety out of my life. And I couldn't do it because my dad died at 72, just turned 72. And I just went, what if I die before I do this? So I put aside my monetary concerns and I put a stake in the ground over the legacy I want to leave in the world. And this is what it is. Wisdom is abound for time immemorial, for thousands of years. Wisdom is around us everywhere. As long as we're restricted to have wisdom be written and universal, timeless, ancient, or current wisdom to be based on a written media experience, we are depriving ourselves of actually assimilating the wisdom so that all aspects of who we are can receive it and enable us to show up at the level that we're talking about in this whole call. So my legacy, my desire is to raise a minimum of $5 million. I'll start with 100,000, but a minimum to actually put out a call for the wisdom keepers, known and unknown, that can add to my 600-hour library of some of the most extraordinary people that only a fraction of which have been scored. And this genre that the Global Wisdom Foundation is about is called, what I call it, alchemical wisdom. And it's wisdom that's been alchemized by the art of film scoring and sometimes images of nature that allow people to have a sense of awe with Gaia, with your eyes, which often funnel linear discriminative rational mind through the eye. You just stun the eyes with awe, and then the alchemy of wisdom and a scored musical treatment, not any musical treatment, scored, intentionally curated, will enable people to actually feel the wisdom in a way that will change the world and will change your life. And that's what Graceful Passages was. And that's what this Global Wisdom Foundation is. It's about a genre that I want as my legacy, nothing more than that. because I know it is one of the spokes of the wheel of the healing of the world, of the healing
Mm.
of the turning of the tide, of the awakening to the great possibility that the human experiment can offer. That's my dream.
You know, I love that. And what you were saying in terms of wisdom is everywhere. It is available at any moment, at any time. And when you said that, I literally felt like a little petal, like a little flower in my consciousness, and it opened up a memory. And I'd love to share it with you because it feels very relevant to this
Great.
moment. Is that
Love to
okay?
hear it. Yeah.
Yeah. So, you know, I remember I was participating in a peyote ceremony a couple of years back, and I have my grandfather being a musician and my great grandfather, and just being friends with. There's a lot of musicians in my life, which I don't believe is coincidence. But I remember this moment where I was very deep in the medicine, and I look over to a friend of mine who's sitting there with her little baby daughter on her lap, and she's doing the rattle, and they're doing the drum, and she's singing. Oh my god, I get chills head to toe just talking about this. I look over to her, and in a moment, all I see is just this beautiful, colorful harmonic geometry. I no longer see her and her little baby daughter. I just see, oh, like a painting. I have chills when I say this, of geometry and color and beauty and just perfection. And I just see this geometry moving with greater force out of what would have been her mouth into the fire, up into the sky. And in that moment, what I understood is that in that beautiful coherence of geometric patterning, it was an energetic match for what we can call wisdom to come through and enter the room and be
Nice.
absorbed by
Wow.
whoever was present in that moment with that woman.
Or
And in that
whoever
moment
resonates.
was like, boom, that something has entered all of us who are here with her, whether we can see the geometry or not. And as I see you nodding your head. So as I speak into this, I'm curious to match this with your understanding of music and reality and coherence and what you see.
I think that you just described another result of multidimensional resonance, of radical presence, of flow, of the the skies opening up for the sacred geometry of the flower of life, et cetera, revealing itself in having a guest appearance in our 3D world, right?
Wow.
It's what we live for, right? It's to crack open this wall that can open sometimes when we receive it or when we call it forth. I
Mhm.
think it's a beautiful story. And that's one of the reasons why, even though it was some of the hardest jobs I've ever done, I'm so proud of the work I did for Foster and Kimberly Gamble of the Thrive films, because they really, no one has ever devoted more beauty, attention, expertise, skill to describing these sacred geometric patterns that are the toroidal field of life itself. And if you don't, those of you who are listening and don't know about the Thrive films, you might disagree with some of the things they say, but they're the most phenomenal conversation starters. Thrive is on YouTube. There's Thrive 1 in 2011, Thrive 2, 2020. But Foster and Kimberly Gamble made a commitment to the universe, and 100 million people in 30 languages have seen these films. So,
Wow.
and the other thing I want to say in response to what you just said is, I've now interviewed so many of these world-class wisdom keepers. There would be a moment where I would literally, as an empath and as a sensate, I I I would suddenly feel when that person dropped into their higher consciousness, to their big ass self, and all of a sudden the little small self just was left the room. And I literally, I'd say to myself or to the engineer I was with, Houston, we've made contact. It's like the big S self is in the room. And it's similar to that description, although I don't have ease in seeing images like you just described, but it was a complete energetic match to, okay, we're in the field. We're there. How can I, as a composer, possibly have the humility, the courage, and the strength, and the power and the wisdom to score it in a way that will make it even better for people that are not awakened to what that would even feel like? How can we create Trojan horse experiences that disarm people's defenses, even if they don't even know what's happening. That's why that little 10-year-old who loved the art of film scoring, he loves doing undercover manipulation work to get people's hearts and souls engaged. That's my, that's why I'm so committed to this legacy that is just at its beginnings. And I'll say this last thing because it's the thing I'm most excited about. Out of this Global Wisdom Foundation, I've developed a concept of addressing the divisiveness in our culture that is so toxic right now. And I've come up with this concept called the unity and community experience, awakening our shared humanity one community at a time. And I've done a few of them in small cities. And I have one I'm waiting for the confirmation that I might be at a major cathedral in a major city at the end of September that will correlate a grief literacy course for a day with a celebration of multi-generational, multicultural, multi-denominational people that will celebrate our unity at a time when there's unprecedented hostile aggression and divisiveness and cruelty being manifest in our country. And I think people are tired of this vast adolescent unconsciousness. And I want to use the power of music and wisdom and convening and celebrating and grief literacy, which is the course I've created with Hope Fitzgerald at u-awake.com. Check it out. It's the most effective grief assimilation tool I've ever heard of, and we've worked very hard on it. People are really expressing enormous pleasure from what they've gotten from it. Anyway, that's on the globalwisdomfoundation.org site, there's a page that says events, and under there is UIC, Unity and Community. And I'm trying to launch a concept that could be like a templated franchise in different cities around the world to address the divisive disease that's in our culture. I'm kind of on fire on that one. So that's what my current big project is right now. So
Beautiful, beautiful. I love it. And I look forward to hearing all about it on the playa. Wonderful.
I have to say I'm a little nervous about going because it's like, what am I about to be going through? It's like so I've got to talk to a few people on the baby burners, the WhatsApp link that will help me assuage some of my fears.
Just a portal, but I have a feeling you're well equipped. Just these conversations are gonna help you go flying high. So I'm not worried about you at all.
Okay, good.
So beautiful. As we near the end of this interview, I'm going to ask you a question that I ask everyone that comes on. Don't think twice about it. Just whatever comes through. Ready? What does legendary mean to you?
Immortality.
Tell me more.
Legendary means that you have made an imprint on the tapestry of humanity's evolutionary journey, that deserves to be immortalized and remembered in the imprint of life, in the the Akashic records of the universe. Legendary means that you've lived a life that has stood for what matters most, that stood for the courage to remember who you are, that stood for being good even when it was really hard. Legendary means that having the courage to do what you came here to do and who you came here to be. That's what that means. In that sense, this is our access to immortality, if there is any at all.
Beautiful. Well, you're about to walk it right into that. So, Gary, thank you so much for sharing today. Your stories are so inspiring, and I'm sure that everyone who's listening has gotten such deep value out of this. I'm selfishly really happy I got to meet you in this way, in real time, and just uncover all of this literally on record. So,
and I'm a huge fan of you. I got goosebumps just from thinking about and being with you. So you're awesome. I'm really excited to give you a hug.
Thank you. Me too. Well, thank you for being with us. So everyone, today, this is Celinne Da Costa on the Legendary Podcast, and we'll see you in the next conversation. Gary, thank you again.
Bye.
Thank you for walking with us through the fires of remembrance. If today's story stirred something in your soul, share it with a fellow god or goddess. Subscribe to Legendary for more transmissions from our tribe, and may you continue weaving your legend in love and joy. Until next time, stay sovereign, stay sacred, and make it legendary.